Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome once again on our Pont de Politique channel. Umtungo yengwayo kamalinge. Undima kankumbuzo. Mntana Nkosi welcomes you once again in this wonderful Sunday where we are meeting each other after a very, very long time. Before we can go anywhere and before I can say any other things that I want to say, I want you to remember Pont de Politique on YouTube. Please make sure that you subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We are available also on Twitter. We're available on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. It is important to have as many followers as possible, especially on YouTube, because we need a greater number of people that are making a following into the channel, so that the channel can continue to grow and it can be able to, excuse me, and it can be able to further continue to provide some of the types of analysis that and conversations that we have been having over the past year and a few months. So please, guys, welcome. If you are with us there on YouTube, welcome. Make sure that you don't forget, subscribe, and put in the notifications so that we can see when we are doing other programs as well. You can, so that you can remember, or we can remind you about the work that we do. We are always available at 6 o'clock. Like we are now, we are always available at 6 o'clock on Sunday, unless there is an emergency that we can't control. And as you can hear, my voice is not kosher, but at the same time, while it is not kosher, there has been also other and I have had a problem with flu over the past few weeks, so I could not be part and parcel of the program. And then the team said, by the way, it was Easter time, and therefore I should try and recover. So please pardon my voice a bit. As you can see that I'm having something warm as well, to ensure that I deal with the discomfort. I'm sorry for that, and I really apologize. We will do our best to make sure that we are coming through very well and very easy, and we are better audible. I know for sure that there has been many things that have been taking place over the past few weeks, from the appointment of the electricity minister, to the jiving of the electricity minister, to the legal issues of the public protector and the acting public protector taking a position around the issue of financing the legal fees of the public protector. But also the biggest one, which everybody has been talking about, has been the Thabo Bester story, and everything else seemingly in South Africa has been put to the side, especially in relation to the news, especially in relation to the political analysis. There's been much taking place, but majority of people have decided to focus extensively on that story. Well, Pont de Politique is not going to focus on that story because everybody else is focusing on that particular story. It's a lot. It's too much. I think it would make sense that somebody else begins to speak about something else. But also at the same time, the issue of load shedding, you would have noticed that over the past few weeks, there has been some slight difference after the EFF load shedding national shutdown. There has been, I think what one were to say, there has been some bribing from Eskom where the load shedding was not that intensive, but now it has come back. And again, it's on stage 6 and nobody's saying anything. If there is, a few of those people are saying something, because everybody has been consumed by this movie of Thabo Bester and her girlfriend, Dr. Nandipa, I don't know his surname, but I mean her surname. But I'm for sure that many people are calling her Dr. Nandipa. I also do the same. But also another thing that has been in the news, there has been something very intriguing around. I want to just make a quick comment around this. The resurgence of the Nando's marketing team, especially now that there is this Thabo Bester issue, when there was an issues around Pala, when there were issues around the letters, the issues around the president, the marketing team, the social media marketing team that tends to come up with some funny jokes around the political developments or some other social issues of South Africa from Nando's, they were quiet, but all of a sudden, when Thabo Bester's story hits the popular media, you find that there is so much jokes around that. I think I find this very concerning from Nando's. Well, I'm not alone. There are other people as well. But the last thing also on the issue of Thabo Bester, there's been a strict mistrust or the distrust from the South African population, South African citizens, those who care to comment around the issue of Thabo Bester, on the issue of is it really him, considering that his ID and all these other stories that are taking place. And I'm saying, as a person who reads politics, as a person who is into politics, as a person who try to engage in politics as much as I can, and I'm saying, if you are listening and you are in government or you are in the ruling party or whatever the case might be, and you're asking yourself these questions around why, because Thabo Bester is arrested, there has been a large number there is a large number of people in South Africa who have lost trust in the administration, in the government, as things stand. So these things of questioning whether Thabo Bester is Thabo Bester who's been arrested, where is he going to be incarcerated, and all of those things, they all lead to one thing. Not necessarily that people have got ulterior motives, but the idea is influenced by the fact that the majority of South Africans or South African citizens or people who live in South Africa refer themselves as South Africans. They do not have trust in the government of the day. They do not have trust in the processes of the state. They do not have trust in the system, the leadership in its entirety in government. So when you see situations like the Bester story, when you see people questioning around what really is happening around the issue of load shedding, when you hear people, when there was a lot of cynicism and skepticism around the issue of COVID-19, and there's a lot of things that are taking place. So the fundamental issue is that the majority of people in South Africa do not trust the leading government, they do not trust the leadership, they do not trust the administration. But because they don't trust, they end up making jokes of all of these things, because when they look at the back, they see the rock. When they look at the front, they see a hard place. And therefore, they find a Nyaupe type of a situation to create the bad situation to create some form of an escape through joking about issues and all of that. But if you look at it deep down, there is an element of mistrust within South Africa against the state, South Africa departments, leadership, and political elites. There's absolutely no trust. So you should understand it from that perspective. But what I want to speak about is basically two things today, and I'm going to start in this way. On the 15th of April 1996, South Africa started or witnessed the starting of what we would later know as South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, chaired by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And it was on the 15th of April, as I've already said. Now, on the 15th of April 2023, it's been 27 years since the first session of the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. Over the past 27 years, there's been a lot of contestation, debates and questions, including the insults thrown at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And majority of people have made, those who are in the academia have written papers, critics, others have defended the process, and those who are in the political space who disagreed or disagrees with the outcomes or the TRC, taken a certain position. Those who supported it say that the TRC avoided what you would call a civil war, and it created a peaceful environment. Others say, no, the TRC did not create such an environment. It created a worse situation and protected the apartheid perpetrators, including the apartheid beneficiaries, and all of that. And others are therefore saying even the type of society that we have witnessed as post-apartheid or post-1994 is as a result of some of these concessions that started first from the CODESA 1, CODESA 2, and the multi-party negotiation panel or party, whatever you want to call that. So even everything that transpires now in South Africa post-1994, some people put it squarely on the shoulders of CODESA, CODESA 1, CODESA 2, multi-party negotiations, the TRC, and then the adoption of the South African Constitution, Act 108 of 1996. So all of those things, they have then presented the country, the critics are saying they presented the country to where it is. Now, if you look at that, you would then find a way of saying, okay, then it means the TRC was, for one group it was good, for another group it was bad. But I've written I've read a paper and an opinion by one professor who proposes the Second Republic, and he talks about the state of affairs in South Africa, and he highlights certain things like the country has remained, is experiencing load shedding, the country is regressing, and all of these other things, and he outlines very tangible issues that are taking place. But also, what I picked up out of that was when he said South Africa needs to reset, or it needs a completely overhaul. And that caught my attention on the basis that if therefore South Africa needs a reset, now when he talks about South Africa, he talks about the post-1994 South Africa. He says South Africa needs a reset on the basis that the concessions that were made in CODESA 1, 2, multi-party disciplinary, and everything else that happened after that created or provided a foundation for what we see to this day. So because of that, he therefore says that there must be a complete overhaul of South Africa. He talks about the Electoral Commission. He talks about the Electoral Act. He talks about the provinces. He says the 9 provinces is a waste of money and time. And he even outlines the reasons why the provinces were established. And he says it was because they wanted to concede for those who preferred a federalistic society, like your Inkatha, your National Party, AVP, Freedom Front Plus, whatever you want to call them, and all that jazz. So he outlines some of these things. But for me, I therefore say today, I think it would be wiser to just interrogate some few issues around the TRC and its impact on the post-apartheid South Africa or a post-1994 South Africa. Because some people are of the view that it was this process, or it was this one of the processes that created the type of an environment that South Africa has found itself in today. So we are going to be talking and asking questions and making comments and inputs around the issue of the TRC. I want to hear, how do you view and what is your view around the TRC with an advantage of in hindsight? What is your view of the TRC? There might be those who were present during the TRC. There might be those who were there at the TRC. So there might be a large number of people who have got a view in relation to the TRC. So please put your comments across. Make sure that you send us your comments and talk to us and ask us the questions as we continue with the conversation. We have no guest. I am with you the whole day. I mean, the whole hour, sorry, I'm with you. So I want to make sure that we interrogate some of these questions as I'm conversing around the issue of the TRC. But before we can go very far, I want to make sure that we play some of these videos of the TRC just to remind you about the type of processes that were taking place during the TRC. And I hope that they will remind you, if you were there. If you were not, I hope they will make things make sense to you.
To their stories. Monica Godolozi, Elizabeth Hashe, and Nomali Galela are the widows of 3 leaders of the Port Elizabeth Black Civic Organization, the men known as the PEPCO 3. During the early 1980s, Kwakwahuli Godolozi, Sipho Hashe, and Champion Galela became targets of the security forces, and their families suffered continuous harassment. They last saw their husbands on the 8th of May 1985, when the PEPCO 3 mysteriously disappeared. They now accept that their husbands must be dead.
I never buried my husband. My wish is that since they killed him and his friends, I would like the Commission to investigate where they were killed, how they were killed, and why they were killed. We'd like to know the killers. The killers should come forward to confess that yes, we killed them. We killed them. I'm asking for assistance. I've never liked doing that. I'm a proud person. I still don't like it. Now I would even ask for assistance from my enemy. I would like the Truth Commission to assist me. I would even like the Cox evidence to be followed up, because I would like these people to reveal the whole truth.
Tonight, we will give the PEPCO family some answers. Colleague Jacques Poe takes up the story.
Vlakplaas.
This is as you have seen, this is one moment that affected the PEPCO 3 in the Eastern Cape in Port Elizabeth. This is one episode, one session. And I know that when I posed this question around the issue of your recollections around the TRC earlier, some people were outlining these particular emotions, the raw emotions of the individuals who were victims of apartheid and police brutality and all that. This is one aspect of it. But also at the same time, there was another aspect of the TRC that looked into some of the other people who came from the opposite side. So let's hear also these other ones.
Today, the Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging and other right-wing organizations, such as the Bond van Boere Krygsgevangenes, are pleading for amnesty for these right-wing prisoners. They claim that, like the ANC, they too were engaged in a political struggle for freedom.
The Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging was founded by Eugene ter Blanche and a handful of others in Transvaal in 1973. It was launched in direct opposition to the National Party because its members found the NP's race policy too liberal. Ter Blanche and his neo-Nazi organization also believed that the Afrikaner was a chosen people of God.
Lang leef die Afrikanerdom!
By the mid-1980s, the AWB was fast gaining a reputation for political thuggery. They disrupted National Party meetings and heckled speakers around the country. In the 90s, after the unbanning of the ANC, SACP, PAC and other organizations, the AWB started flexing its military muscle and threatened the government with war if the ANC ever came into power.
The intentions of the ANC is to destroy my people, to destroy everything in sight. My message to the ANC is never try to put your hands on this fatherland. We paid too dearly for it.
In 1994, on the eve of South Africa's first democratic election, there were a spate of bombings and acts of sabotage. This was a last desperate bid by the right wing to create chaos in the country.
As hulle wil hê die bomme moet ophou ontplof, dan moet hulle erkenning gee aan die volkerreg waarlangs elke volk homself mag regeer. Maar ek sê vandag, met die grootste stelligheid, kry ons nie 'n republiek nie, dan sal Suid-Afrika soos Guy Fawkes lyk. Binne 'n maand, die boere gaan hom totaal uitbrand.
Here you're noting also another aspect of the group of the Boere who also were of a certain view in relation to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And lastly, we are going to play a short clip that talks to one aspect, and it will be the last aspect of these videos that I want to play, because I just want to bring out a reminder to you as viewers so that we can be able to understand where we come from and from where I want to make my submission in relation to the conversation.
Civilians, but we destroyed European invaders, dispossessors, criminals. Because here you want to create a situation whereby our struggle is as recent as the PAC. And that's not the case. Our struggle against colonialism is as old as when the colonialists set their foot here and showed their sinister motives of dispossessing our forefathers of the land. And the whole struggle, the whole armed struggle, was the continuation of that. And actually, we can draw the ancient wisdom from our forefathers. When Dingaan said to the Zulu warriors, Bulala Abathakathi, what did he mean? He meant that those dispossessors, Abathakathi, the Zulu warriors didn't ask among themselves who were the Abathakathis, who were the wizards, but they knew who the wizards were, and they were whites. And when Mushweshwe, King Mushweshwe of Basotho, in his wisdom, said, meaning that the whites will always have solidarity in oppressing the Africans. He drew that from experience, from the practical experience that was going on. And I dare say that the TRC is more concerned with the white life because even the questions are being filtered by a man who benefited hugely from the dispossession of our people. Because as far as I'm concerned, he who benefits by crime is guilty of that crime. And every white person in this country benefited from the crime of dispossession, benefited from the crime of colonialism, benefited from the crime of apartheid. But now you want to extract yourself from this crime. And it is so displeasing that the grandsons and daughters of Mushweshwe, of Shaka, of Sikukuni are now bearing the burden of their abusers, because you abused us. All in all, the TRC doesn't encourage people to speak truth. And I dare say this whole farce, this whole circus is doomed for failure. It's doomed for failure for obvious reasons.
Another aspect that I thought I should bring as well, this is a third line and is a third approach, because I'm talking about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but also at the same time, there are those people who were seen as victims of the apartheid regime, but also victims of the liberation guerrillas, and also they were victims of the SATF, SAP, and all the state machinery. So these videos that we played, we wanted to just make a slight reminder. It's not everything, but they want to show a slight reminder around the issue of the TRC. Now, for many of you, these are my views that I want to put across, and I want you to engage me on them if possible. You can even continue to expand this conversation beyond this platform. But it's important that we understand how did the TRC came about. I've already mentioned that the TRC came about because of the 1993 Act. I mean, the interim constitution of 1993, which made space for the government of national unity, the elections, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But some of the few things that I had, I worry about, and I've been worrying about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of South Africa are probably 3 or 4. The first one is the focus period of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The second one is the individualization of the amnesty application. And the third one is the availability or the lack thereof of truth in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I know many people have spoken about justice and as a separate aspect. But for me, I want to raise these 3 things and show some of the questions that probably might have been asked before, but we're raising them because it's 27 years later, and also there are people now who are beginning to say, we need a reset. South Africa must reset. Some people are saying, actually, the Rainbow Nation narrative did not hold. Some people are saying, no, we need to start afresh. Some people are saying the electoral approaches in South Africa are not working. Some people are questioning the constitution and all of those things. So I identified this particular aspect and say, because it's 27 years later since the commission came into existence, I thought it was important that we raise some of these issues around the issue of the commission. So I argue, therefore, that the focus period of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which identified that its focus is going to be from the 1st of March 1960 up until the 10th of May 1994. The 1st of March 1960, it is the beginning of the month, which led up to Sharpeville, the massacre, where a group of leaders of the PAC went around and caused a stir in the country and the majority of people were then killed in Sharpeville, and others were killed in the late evening around 5 o'clock in Gwalanga, and others were then arrested and all of that. So the 1st of March 1960 begins that particular historic month in the history of South Africa's politics, in the history of the PAC, in the history of Africa, and in the history of the world. And then the 10th of May 1994 is the date on which the inauguration of Nelson Mandela was conducted as a president of the democratic South Africa. By the way, as I have, now that I'm talking about the 10th of May, the 10th of May has always been significant in the history or in the culture of settler colonial ideology. When South Africa was established in 1910 as a union, it was conferred or confirmed on the 10th of May 1910, when the Boer Republic of 1948, it was confirmed on the month of May 1948, when the new constitution was being conferred by 1981. It was done so in May 1981, and when the Nelson Mandela was being inaugurated in the new South Africa, it was on the 10th of May 1994, and any other president that has been inaugurated after him up until President Cyril Ramaphosa in South Africa have all been inaugurated on the month of May. So the history of May, the month of May, and especially the date of the 10th, is an important day in the history of settler colonialists in South Africa. So if you did not know why the presidents of South Africa are always inaugurated around that, I think now you know the elements of coloniality that still stretch in the so-called post-liberation period, where the month of May, those elements of that settler colonial dynamic, settler colonial knowledges are embedded. Now, I therefore say that is the focus period. And one of the things that I find problematic is the fact that by 1960, by the 1st of May 1960, apartheid was 12 years old because apartheid had started in 1948. By 1950, it was in full force. By 1952, there was a series of dispossession, land removals, arrests, typical laws that were racist, and all of these elements that were taking place. So by 1960, 10 years or 12 years later, a fully blown entrenchment of apartheid had been established, had been put in motion, established, and the apartheid government was actually controlling the majority of the lives of the African people. Not that the European settlers were not controlling the lives of the Africans before that, but I'm saying the apartheid government had an easy task, therefore, because colonialism before that was had already affected the lives of the African people in South Africa. So in that way, the commission decided to look at that period, and I then asked myself, why 1960? Why the 1st of 1960, and also not earlier than that? But also, why does it stop at the Mandelarization of the democratic dispensation at the 10th of May 1994? Because by the time there was an interim constitution, why couldn't it extend up until 1996? Why was that not the case? So I think this is where the problem emanates firstly. And I therefore claim that the TRC was in the process, therefore, of defending apartheid, of defending settler colonialism as well. Because I want you to understand, viewers at home, if you're watching and if you will be looking at this and making your comments, I want you to understand that apartheid does not come from the sky. It did not fall from the sky. It emanates from a certain historicity, a certain factuality of South Africa, where imperialists came into South Africa, created a political entity called South Africa, united against the African people in the region, and made sure that the standard of what is a people is that of Europeans and is that of the British and the Afrikaners. So, so the TRC, for me, I think it made the first problem by periodizing the period of concern to 1st March 1960 until the 10th of April, 10th of May 1994. And one of the problems also of 1994 is that by 1994, some liberation movements had not put away the arms. The Azanian People's Liberation Army is one example. So by 1994, they were still part and parcel. They were, according to their understanding, they were still engaging in liberation struggle. So by stopping the period, you see, you prematurely stop the period on the May 10th, 1994, while somebody else is still saying, but you are still in the struggle. But somebody else will then inquire and ask, so how backwards can you go for things to make sense? And I'm saying, it's not like we don't know when did the Europeans arrive in South Africa. It's not like we don't know. We go back as far as that. And so somebody else would then say, but to what point must we then say up until when? And I think for me, it is up until the redress of the past has been done properly. So there's a problem for me here, and I think you might go back and want to engage this particular topic, this particular point, but there was a problem about the periodization. And look at how this becomes problematic at the same time, is that by 1952 and up until 1955, when people were being removed from their houses, places of abode, the laws that were used were those laws that have got their roots in the native administrative development of 1927. Now, 27 is a colonial period, but the apartheid government in 1950 and 1952, when it was beginning to banish people, taking away people's properties, lands, and all of that, it used the very same law. It used the very same law or the same laws that were part and parcel of that settler colonial period. So therefore, it made it easy for it to ensure that it is participating. As I've said earlier, we still had a case that should have went as far back as possible to ensure that the TRC was not defending apartheid, because from what I read and how I understand this periodization, the TRC was trying to defend apartheid. But also at the same time, there were people who were disagreeing vehemently with this process, and they tried whatever they tried. And I know that there's somebody who's making a comment, it's Tana Mohammed, and she says, it is for this reason that Azapa opposed the TRC in court in 1996, but were unsuccessful. And I think one of the things that might have made it unsuccessful, maybe Tana, you can clarify us on this particular aspect. maybe one of the things that might have caused that to be unsuccessful was that now in 1996 there was a different constitution, and 1993 there was a different constitution. So please take us through that a little bit, if there is something that you can clarify us on that particular aspect of the contestation of Azapo taking the TRC to court. So I'm talking about the periodization was problematic, and that periodization created a problem. That is the first step. But the second step was also in the definition of the violation of gross violation of human rights, and the TRC created this situation. And I write like this when I talk about that particular aspect. Another perplexity of the commission was its characterization of gross human rights violations, which it regarded as, I quote, gross violations of human rights are those that happened through the killing, abduction, torture of any person, including any attempt, a conspiracy, incitement, instigation, the command or procurement to commit an act referred to above. So the gross violation, according to the TRC, did not include the dispossession of the land, the dispossession of the properties of the people. This was in the TRC's interpretation of what is gross human rights violation. It was, I'm reading it again, it was those that happened through the killing. So it began to limit the propensity, the impact of gross human rights violation. So if your parents were dispossessed of their homes, whatever the case may be, the TRC was like, fuck that shit, we are not part and parcel of that. As an African, so those were not basically a gross human rights violation according to the TRC, and that's where the problem, I think, came into. And these are the questions that probably we need to continue interrogate. The second aspect was that in the TRC there was this individualization of amnesty application. So where was the amnesty taking place? In the TRC, there were commissions. There were different commissions. There was a commission on compensation, or I think reparations. There was a commission on investigations. There was a commission on amnesty. So there was committees. Sorry, there was the commission, and it had committees. One of the committees that was an important aspect was the amnesty committee, and also the finance or reparations committee. The reparations committee did not, and whatever it recommendations were thrown away in the Ashcan of East. Nobody listens to them. Thabo Mbeki was like, fuck, the state doesn't have money to pay those people. If they did pay, they probably paid them some 350 or 3,500. So, but my focus again was the problem of individualizing the amnesty, and that individualization where it was another ploy or a further extension to make sure that the TRC again defends apartheid. If you understand apartheid, you need to understand that apartheid was a crime against humanity. Humanity is always understood to be collective. There is no humanity that is not collective. When we talk about humanity, we're talking about a collectiveness. So the apartheid was regarded as a crime against humanity. Now, when the people, the humanity, when the communities, when the liberation movements, when they were engaging in the struggle against settler colonial apartheid, they were doing that as a collective on behalf of the people, on behalf of the humanity, on behalf of the communities, on behalf of the Africans. You get that, ne? But now when the TRC committee of amnesty, excuse me, when it did that, it created an environment where it said, because you were involved in as the MKK, as an Azandla, as an Apla, or whatever you were, we are going to hold you accountable as a person, and therefore not as a collective. So it is. This is what I mean when I'm talking about the individualization of the amnesty, and therefore people began to, one, make sure that they are not speaking the truth, or they speak a truth that is accepted, or they don't even go to that amnesty committee, and all of that jazz. But what was more glaring and problematic was the fact that that individualization of the amnesty application made it as if Thando Lwethu was the one who was fighting against the apartheid. So it was, and me as an individual fighting against the system, which is apartheid, when actually it was apartheid that was fighting against the people. I, as an individual, I was part and parcel of the collective. And that created, therefore, a situation where the government of a national party was then absolved in some way. Because remember, I said the interpretation of gross human rights violation was relating to now other individuals. Say, like, this individual killed this individual killed that individual, this individual abducted that individual, this individual attempted to abduct that individual, and all these things that are making the struggle against settler colonialism as if it was a struggle of minute. It was not a struggle that was affecting the entirety of the African communities or of the African people as a whole. So that committee made sure that it was removing the pain or the impact again of apartheid as a crime against humanity, so much that therefore F.W. de Klerk kept on saying, what the fuck, apartheid was not a crime against humanity, because I think what made him to have that particular outlook was already that the TRC had created a space for him and his national party to run away from that particular issue. So when the TRC created that, or did not create a clear definitions of these things, it made way, it created a passage for apartheid government and apartheid perpetrators to navigate away from the fact that apartheid was a crime against humanity. So there was this emphasis on individual responsibility, which ignored the reality that apartheid was lawfully intertwined with every facet of life of the African people. What you eat, where you work, where you stayed, what you learn, what you study, what you become, the type of people you became as Africans was entirely wrapped around the system of apartheid. Now, to then create an environment where apartheid was then seen to be a contestation between an individual who was killing another individual, abducted one individual, and another attempted to abduct another individual, and all of that, that is basically nonsense from how I see the impact of apartheid. And I say this is the second aspect that apartheid, the TRC, created an environment where apartheid was defended, was protected. Not now, by protecting apartheid, you created an environment where even those who were part and parcel of the implementers of apartheid were protected. Look at the issue of this Eugene de Kock, who's being paid in 2021 in an article that was written by Ama Shabalala in the IOL. It reported that the Eugene de Kock continues to benefit over 200,000 a month from the taxpayers' money. Remember, Eugene de Kock was one of the high-ranking individuals in apartheid, the implementers of apartheid. So if you do not understand this dynamic of what I'm talking about, I'm going to clarify it one more time. Apartheid was a collective problem. It was affecting people collectively. It was hitting every facet of the African people, from where they slept, ate, study, what they became, and everything else. Now, when the TRC and its Committee of Amnesty individualized the amnesty granting, it created a problem where the apartheid was therefore seen as a contestation between apartheid and an individual, when actually apartheid was always been referred to as a crime against humanity. And humanity cannot be individualistic. Humanity is collective. So you must understand it from that perspective. Now, the Truth Commission created a second pathway to defend the apartheid. Now, the other part was the fact that the TRC neglected the truth. Now, the 2 points that I am speaking about are related to the point that I'm talking to. The point of individualizing, the point of periodization, both of them were realities. They were facts. They were truths. They were things that were undeniable. The fact that by the 1400s, the European settlers came into South Africa. By 1652, they had started to create a smallanyana home in the Cape. By the 16th, 17th century, 18th century, they had taken hold of some of the most strategic lands of the area. By 1910, the Africans were defeated. This is the fact, this is the truth. Even the European settlers, historians, they write about this reality. You understand? And they also write about the fact that apartheid was the continuation of settler colonialism, but now being done by a group of people who are from Dutch, who were in coalition with the English in 1910 when they were mooring the Africans and taking over their sovereignty and establishing what is called South Africa. This is the fact. This is the truth. Ne? So both of these aspects, the second fact is that apartheid was a crime against humanity, not only a crime against me as an individual. So that is the second fact. Now, when the TRC did not take these into consideration when it was conceptualizing whatever it was conceptualizing and its focus on the history, it ignored these truths. It ignored these truths to a point that I further say again, and I argue to say the focus was to be on contemporary history. And the contemporary history tells us that 1400s, Europeans came. 1652, they were establishing themselves. 1910, they had won over the territory. 1948, they had became a Boer republic. And all of these things. So these are facts, these are truths. Now the TRC, by creating a new conceptualization of one focus area of crime against humanity, to focus it on 1st March 1960 to 10 May 1994, it was an ignoring of the truth, of the fact. 2, individualizing the situation of apartheid, which was affecting every facet of life of the African people, was another neglect of the truth. But also at the same time, by putting across this act as if you create an act of I don't know whether it was an act of parliament or act of what in that interim constitution, an act that does not clearly interpret, clearly defines what do we mean by victim and perpetrators. Here, you created an environment where apartheid was again absolved, because now Umamu Godulus, Umamu Hash, Umamu Mhlaud, and all the others, as you've seen in that video, were seen as individual victims of apartheid, when actually they were not only individual victims. That was not the story of only them in South Africa. It was the story of 99% of the African people in South Africa. It was not only the story of those who were widows of the Pepco 3. It was not only the story of the people who got affected in Craddock, in Uppington, in KZN, Bloemfontein, Pretoria, Mamelodi, and all these other places. Those were not individual cases. Those were collective cases that were being inflicted on the African people. And therefore, when you create an environment where you say the victims were just individuals, that was the problem, because the victims, if we talk about these mothers, their children became victims as well. They did not have fathers. Their grandchildren became victims as well. They did not have grandfathers. They could not go to school properly. They were not raised well. And all of these dynamics that are affecting the family, the community, the nation of African people in South Africa. And therefore, when the acknowledgement of the apartheid as a crime against humanity was just made, and then no action was properly done in ensuring that the TRC focuses properly on all of these elements, it actually created an environment where it was negating the impact of apartheid. So the TRC, if there are people who are saying the TRC has failed, I think it did not achieve what the majority of people might have expected, but it might have achieved some of its own objectives. Probably because commissions in their very nature, they are established by certain people who've got certain agendas. And I heard somebody who was making a comment in one of our platforms saying that the TRC was funded by the state. I don't think it was only funded by the state, but probably there might be other external and private individuals, companies and interest groups that were involved in the funding of the TRC of South Africa, and therefore they might have specific objectives, specific goals that they were expecting. But in the main, and in the argument that I'm putting across, I'm pointing out just merely three things. There might be others. I'm saying we need to interrogate these questions around this issue of is it really, when we are talking about, I remember now, it's Professor Moloka. Professor Moloka talks about the Second Republic. Now, I'm asking, therefore, if we really need a Second Republic, and when he says that we need a complete overhaul, and I'm planting in your mind to therefore say, one of the questions that you must understand is that the TRC did not only achieve what the majority of people had experienced as victims of apartheid, but it probably achieved what its objectives were, which I think was to defend apartheid, to protect apartheid, and make it as if apartheid was not affecting the people as a collective, and therefore it made these dynamics of saying individualized amnesty, make sure that you are limiting the period with which apartheid is focusing on. And on the basis of that, therefore, apartheid was to be defended. And it is for this reason, from my understanding, that F.W. de Klerk was able to boldly say apartheid was not a crime against humanity, because negotiators had created an environment and a platform where he can be able to say all of those things. I'm going to stop here, and I want to thank you for listening to my rambling and with my bad voice. And I hope that, excuse me, as we are going through this 28th year of the TRC in South Africa, I think it would be wiser to ask these further questions around the issue of the TRC, and we engage them further and we talk about them as if they are important. But I see there's a comment, I'm sorry, I have to take it. I see there's a comment that I have to take. I'm not sure how is it. It's coming from Tamsang Malinga. Tamsang Malinga is talking about, he says, and I know that I had promised that I'm going to stop. I'm stopping, but I'm only taking these comments because they're part and parcel of the conversation. He says, individualistic apartheid was a way or a loophole of sort to make it a point that South Africans as a collective do not seek reparations. That's one point. And he then says we cannot, therefore, separate this individualistic approach with the objectives of the subcommittee on reparations. Again, that's the second point. I'm going to engage you on that. It is difficult for individuals to seek reparations than for a combined people such as a Holocaust victims and the Jews state or the Jewish state who successfully sought reparations. When we get to this, Malinga, I want to start it in this way. The TRC was proposed by the National Party. And one of the things that was made and heard by some of the senior people in the National Party, they had said, I want to read it verbatim from what they were saying. I'm not sure what is it now. Okay, they saying. I'm saying the National Party proposed the TRC to the negotiators. And then he said, the two important people made this comment around the issue of the TRC and around the issue of unburning. They say the police operative, Mr. Dirk Coetzee, who committed apartheid crimes, claimed that, I quote, the National Party did not unburn the ANC without deciding that how they would steer the course of the unburning, close quote. It reads again, I quote, the National Party did not unburn the ANC without deciding what they would do to steer the course of the unburning, close quote. And also at the same time, the next person which I spoken about is F.W. de Klerk, who said that the apartheid was not a crime against humanity, and therefore he then made the reforms programs to negotiate with the ANC. Now, let's come back to you, Malinga. You are saying, therefore, as a collective, it becomes difficult to seek for reparations. And I think it is for this reason that the reparations committee did not do its work, because as individuals, it's easy to bribe individuals. And I agree with you that as individuals, it was difficult to go and take on the state and therefore to take on the committee. That's why it was easy. I agree with you on that. And two, it was well planned that to individualize the process itself, because by individualizing it, you're not going to link it to the monetary aspect. I've never thought of it like this, but as you are saying it now, it makes it easy for me to make an understanding of why you're saying this. So I'm saying to you, if you're watching, wherever you are watching, make this connection between these 3 points that I was making. I said the periodization, secondly, the individualization of apartheid. Its impact is on the reparations. I know that Advocate Mantula has been speaking extensively around the issue of reparations. And I think as South Africans, when we talk about everything else, we must never forget the aspect of reparations. And thank you for this, Malinga, for bringing it to our attention that by separating the collectiveness from apartheid, it made it easy for the further defense of the apartheid machinery. yes, I agree with you, and I'm very much thankful for that, my brother. It was a beautiful insight, and I hope that the people who are also part and parcel of this conversation have picked it up, have understood in this aspect. So as we are closing, I want to make sure that you guys you continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Here is the channel link, and tell your friends, tell your children to say that they must subscribe. Tell your kids to subscribe. It's not going to cost them anything. Just subscribe. We need about 1,000 subscribers at least by June. It would be a good thing to get for this year, at least. If we could get that, I would appreciate it. If you are following us on Twitter, please go to the link on YouTube, just subscribe and ensure that you are part and parcel of this conversation. I see that there's a thank you, a message that is coming through. Malinga again says, thank you for an insightful presentation, especially the background of the month of May. You appreciated, my brother. I have extensively debated that the current state, post-apartheid state, is still an apartheid state, meaning the current government, which is the ANC, was bequeathed apartheid. Thank you and good night. You have heard what Malinga is saying, and it's up to you to make a further debate. But munake ndingumntungwa ndinguyengwayo kamalingi undima kankumbuzo umntana enkosi madoda uthi kuni. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure that you join us again next week on Sunday as we further interrogate some of the other issues that might be important. And you can go back now to your best thing. But munanditi, bye bye, all the best.